Hey, welcome to Leaving CrazyTown with Finn and Sarah.
What are we going to talk about today, Finn?
Today we're going to talk about two opposing responses that are codependent that happen. They're just our response to life, and one is a sense of emergency, jumping into action,
Yes.
co-crazy behavior. The other is avoidance and immobilization,
Yes.
co-crazy behavior.
Yes.
Because, you know, some people do both. Some people are all in the urgency, act, and some people just become immobile, can't make a decision, can't move forward, they avoid it, don't look at what's going on. So we were just going to talk a little bit about that and why there's probably a better way, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, there are two extremes of an emotional spectrum, right? Very frequently, if you're codependent, everything feels like a 911 because you're living in a state of anxiety. So if your child does something or your husband or wife does something or your partner does something or your boss, it feels like, oh my God. And what we're trying to do is have you look at what that's really about, because a 911 response is usually a trauma response where you get activated and you think, I've got to solve it right away. And with codependent people, it's usually I need to solve someone else's problem right away, which that's what we're trying to get out of, right? We're getting the focus back on ourselves. Yeah. So one is 911, like Finn said, and the other one is a lot of times if we're codependent, we don't speak up, we avoid, we don't say what we need, we hide out, we participate in addictions, we, use a lot of other ways.
Yeah, I actually was just thinking about those of us that are in recovery, have family in recovery or not in recovery, and codependent or Al-Anon nights. I was just thinking about this. The sense or that feeling you get when someone you know and love picked up. They started using again and you found out. Now, I recently went through this with someone I love very much, and I noticed the people around me that also know my friend that picked up and how they were all like, what are we going to do? We got to get a car, we got to drive her, we got to get her here, we got to get her there. And I was like, and actually another friend of mine, we were talking about this at dinner because we were both like, wait, do we not care? Because we weren't getting into this emergency sense. It was like a very different response to some people around us who are like, you're going to say something, you got to do something, right. You got to reach out. And I'm like, well, really, nobody gets recovery unless they want it. Right. And I'm not going to give it to them. So I noticed the difference between how I used to react, because in my family, whenever there was an emergency, yes. for someone else, which I absolutely had no control over, I got into emergency mode too, became 100% responsible to try to fix it. Right. And it had nothing to do with me. Right. And while I love my brothers and sisters in recovery and I want them to stay there and I'm willing to help them, their picking up can't be my emergency. You know, yes. They're picking up, I can show up for them and do what I can, but I can't afford as an addict to get wound up about things I have no control over. Yes. Bottom line.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great example. I mean, in the codependent recovery world, having someone in your life who's an addict kind of was the origin, right, of the word codependency. So that's such a great example.
And you have family members, it really feels like a serious personal emergency yes. when they're doing things that could potentially result in death.
Yes, absolutely.
But
well, that's what the bottom line fear is, that's the end result, that's something. And the delusion is that somehow you're going to stop it, which we can't.
And I've seen many times when family members stop trying to get into emergency rescue mode that the person actually does get recovery.
Yes.
Because they're not having everyone else pick up the pieces for them.
Yes, absolutely.
It's hard, though, because you got to sit with that. I don't know what's going to happen tonight.
That's right.
That feeling.
That's right. Yeah, and the actions that when we start focusing on the other person, it really takes us out of ourselves, and it's a way we can feel in control of an out-of-control situation.
And as a recipient to someone else's emergency behavior, think about it. How does that feel? I'm sure all of us have been in a scenario where something's occurred for us and people around us are activated in emergency mode. Does that energy level actually contribute to you feeling better, you feeling comfortable with what's going on, or help you pause? I think not.
No.
I don't like that feeling around me. If there's an emergency, I just need everybody to simmer down now. Simmer down. Most likely not an emergency anyway, but you know.
Yes, great example. I'm going to give another example that's a little different, and you guys might relate to this too. So when I was in California, I had this experience. I went out there to do a podcast, and it didn't go the way I thought it would go. And anyways, when I was coming home, I had this feeling, this emergency feeling like, oh my God, I've got to call this guy and tell him not to release it. Because I had this belief of how it went down that really wasn't reality. So I was reacting to delusional thinking. Just like you're reacting to an addict thinking you're to save them, you can have emergency feelings about anything. And so I kept noticing this. I got home, I prayed about it, I wrote about it, I talked to friends about it. And the thing with the 911 sensation is, it's really a fear, and it wasn't about this situation with this guy. It was really a feeling of shame that was coming up for me about something that happened out there. And from the minute I got involved in this situation, I was having these bodily reactions, and it was bringing up old stuff. And that 911 feeling was this feeling I needed to control literally what was going on inside of me. And really what I needed to do is notice it, feel it, process it. And the irony about this whole situation is later, a couple of months later, when I actually heard that recording, there was nothing wrong with it. So think about that. Just think about that though, how we can create a delusion out of fear, and our perception is totally inaccurate, but we believe it. And the tool here is, when you're gonna act out of a 911 sensation, what do we always say, Finn? Pause, just notice, and do your own work before taking action. Because if I had called that guy, he would have thought I was insane. And yet the feelings were so powerful. And so it's just another example of how those reactions can feel so intense, and our thinking that's connected to the feeling often seems so real, but it was delusional thinking. So what are some tools?
Delusional. All right, so we're not jumping to tools. Now we've got to go to, we're running low on time here.
I know, that's why I was...
Immobility, lack of action, avoidance behavior.
Yes.
All right, so what would be an avoidant behavior?
Well, it's another way to not feel things, right? It's like there's overreacting and then there's shutting down. So it's shutting down so I don't have to address or feel something or take an action on something I'm avoiding. Go ahead.
A lot of people, I hear this all the time at my work, they get a letter from the IRS or the DOR, they don't open it, and they shut down. So they create an idea of what's in the envelope.
Yes.
They have no idea. And I've actually done this.
That's a great example.
I get a thing that says US something, and I think it's the IRS letter, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting audited. And I go through this like mini freak out, and I open it up, and it's my explanation of benefits from my health insurance that's just saying, you know, the list of appointments. And I laugh because every time I get those letters, I immediately think I'm getting a letter from the IRS.
Yes.
And what I used to do was not open the envelope. The fear would kick in, and I'm like, oh, I can't face it.
Right.
And you could be doing that with anything in your life, where you're like, I can't face it, so I'm going to pretend it's not happening, and I'm not going to act.
Yes, and the crazy thing about that, and this is something to remember, if you address something, you might be uncomfortable for like 10 seconds, and there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to the event. And my hair keeps bugging me; it keeps sticking out. Sorry, guys. But if you but if you don't address it, it's just gonna last forever.
Yeah.
And you're never gonna deal with it. And you know what also happens? You're gonna think of all kinds of other ways now to avoid. So first, maybe you'll just repress. Then maybe you'll become addicted to video games. Then maybe you'll need to get in a relationship. Then maybe you'll get depressed. I mean,
maybe you'll pick up.
Maybe you'll pick up. The more we avoid and the longer we avoid, the more we need other things to distract ourselves.
All right.
All right, go ahead. We're wrapping it up.
There's a middle ground here.
Yes.
Emergency response, act 90 miles an hour, and
Yes.
set up a whole ball rolling of stuff we don't want to deal with, not reacting at all and not dealing with stuff.
Yes.
So in the middle, we have pause before you proceed.
Yes.
But if it requires proceeding,
Take an action
proceed.
step.
You have to proceed.
Right.
If you want the freedom, don't react immediately. Wait till you can get yourself calm in your body. Maybe think about it. Sometimes I just, I have a higher power. I ask for help, or I might go for a walk, and all of a sudden the real reaction, that
Yes.
the truth rises up. Like Sarah not reacting and calling that guy. She waited. The video came out, and she was like, "Okay, it was all delusional." But if you're in an activation,
Yes.
or you're shut down, you won't know what the truth is or how to react. So get yourself back to center and then take an action.
Yes. So the thing is, when you're shut down, you want to take a small step. When you're in overreaction, you don't want to take a small step. You want to calm down. I had something else to say about that, and I totally forgot. All right.
Oh, the other thing too, if you're in conversation with someone and you feel yourself activated codependently or whatnot, another thing that's helpful is to just say, like I would say to Sarah, I'm feeling really activated. I'm not
Yes.
sure what's going on.
Yes.
And, with the safe person, you could say that or ask for clarification. So
Yes.
say you created something in your head about what somebody said or a text message you got. Like, ask for clarification. Say, you know what, I'm not sure if I'm interpreting this right.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, do a reality check. If you're in overreaction, call a friend and run it by them and say, does this seem right?
Does this
seem
sound
right?
weird?
Does this sound weird?
Sorry, we had a whole activation over that word.
Yeah, all right.
But anyway,
We're leaving. Fasten your seatbelt.
We're out of here.
We're out of here.